The defense's case is completely falling apart, and the world the Kohbergers built is quickly burning all around them, and the Gonzalez's couldn't be happier. Judge Stephen the Hammer Hippler strikes again, so is anybody missing JJ yet? And welcome to The Point, where everything said is alleged. Please do your own research, form your own opinion, and let me know that opinion, because this is an open discussion channel where we try to be fair. And if more fair coverage on this story and others is something you're lacking, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below. Because the Gonzalez family has become the most polarizing victims family in recent history. I mean, they looked at Buster Murdaugh, who lost his mother, brother, and father all in the same day, and said, "Hold my beer." And for the record, I don't hate that family. They were the parents of one of the victims, and the victim's family have rights, and we advocate for everybody's rights on this channel regardless of popular opinion. But I can't help but point out the irony of this particular situation. This is what they said in their most recent statement. The last 2 years in front of Judge have been filled with frustration and disappointment. From not pronouncing the victims' names correctly, laughing in the courtroom, to entertaining every ridiculous motion or argument the defense could muster. That has been our last 2 years, and now we are hopeful again. We finally have a judge who we believe is prepared, thoughtful, and understands the process. There is a level of seriousness that has not been present for a long time. So today, when we heard of the motions being denied in regards to the DP, we were overjoyed. For our family, for our friends, for our supporters, for everyone who has shed a tear, made a donation, or listened to the story of the children that were passed away. Justice is moving forward, and one day in the not-so-distant future, hopefully it will be served. So JJ was wrong for hearing these motions. He was wrong for wasting the court's time. He wasn't prepared. He had a personality. He had no idea what the process was. And off with Bryan's head. But here's the irony in all this. At the very start of this thing, we were all sympathetic to the Gonzalez family. We sympathized with their grief, we sympathized with their pain, and we understood where they were coming from. But as they started to speak out more and more, they went from an objective point of view saying he might have done it. I want to see what the state has. I want to see what the evidence is. And I'm open to him not being the guy to 100% he's the guy. This guy did what he is accused of. Shame on the court for allowing him to wear civilians. Shame on the court for allowing the defense to file these motions. Shame on the court for hearing these motions. And shame on the defense for being the defense and trying to represent their client. This man's guilty. We're treating this like a joke, and he needs to be in chains. He needs to be carted off to prison right now. We don't even need to have a trial. But as their statements became more and more harsh, more and more people started to speak out against what they were saying. They would chime in on the family's Facebook page. They would chime in the comments section on these channels they would do interviews on. And the Gonzalez's, to a degree, lashed out a little bit, saying, how dare anybody criticize what they're saying? How dare anybody speak for Bryan's constitutional rights? They have a right to be biased. They have a right to grieve, which they do. And they have a right as the victims' families to say whatever they want to say, which is also true. But how are you on one hand going to exercise your First Amendment right while criticizing someone else's constitutional rights? I mean, make that make sense. As I said before, I don't have a problem with that family. They are grieving hard, and I don't even want to begin to imagine what they're going through, nor can I understand what they're going through. But if you're going to make such hard stances, which once again is your right, do not be mad when you get backlash. Do not make yourself out to be the victim in this particular scenario. There is a portion of this country that believes Bryan Kohberger is guilty, and they don't really care how they get to that guilty verdict. And that is just not how this should be. There's a portion of this country that believe he's innocent, regardless of what the state says. And I'll go on and tell you that's not how it should be either. The way it should be is we uphold this man's constitutional rights. We uphold the victim's rights. We get a fair and transparent trial. We get answers to the questions we have. And by the end of the trial, we're all comfortably moving towards a verdict we can all agree with. Trampling on anybody's rights is unconstitutional, it's uncalled for, and it has no place in this country. You don't have a leg to stand on to get mad when people talk about what you're saying and saying how it's wrong, and then turn around and say, well, I have a right to say that. I mean, pick a side and roll with it. Furthermore, they should be thanking JJ instead of constantly criticizing him. Let's all understand how we got here. Wasn't it JJ that had this trial moved from Ladau to Boise, which led us to Judge Hippler, who happens to be the judge they're in love with right now? And his biggest contribution to this case is how he handled it very early on. Very early on in these trials, you have a lot of chaos and commotion. You have a lot of motions. You have a lot of arguments. You have a lot of back and forth and a lot of difficult decisions to make. Now, you can disagree with it all you want, but Judge erred on the side of the defense. He erred on the side of the defense because he didn't want the defense having a leg to stand on if they were filing an appeal. And at least up until this point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not an expert, I don't really see a leg for the defense to stand on in terms of appeals very early on in this particular case. He had said it constantly. He wanted to do it right. He wanted to do it once. So instead of jumping all over that man's back, how about give him a thank you? Because without Judge, there is no Judge Hippler. And without Judge Hippler, you won't have this outpour of love from the Gonzalez family. Because Judge Hippler's going to give that family their much desired pound of flesh. He's going to decisively dispense justice, and this is how it should have been the whole time. Because he absolutely crushed the defense's motion to extend this discovery date. He's denied this motion to remove the DP from the case, and he's forcing the defense to redo this motion for the Franks hearing. So the headlines all across the country and all across this platform is Judge Hippler's no joke. He's ruling for the state. He's working for the state. His hand moves as if the Gonzalez family is controlling it. And honestly, that's a crock of crap too. I legitimately believe John Judge would have ruled the same way in the vast majority of these recent rulings. And here's why. Now, if you honestly thought the DP was going to be removed from this case, you need to raise your hand right now, stick it up in the air, and smack yourself. That was never going to be the case. Because when you listen to the defense's arguments, what their arguments seem to be based on is what they believe the law should be, rather than what the law is in the state of Idaho. And a judge at that level is always going to err towards the law of the state. In fact, in a scenario where Judge Hippler struck down the DP, the state would have appealed it and it went all the way to the Supreme Court and it would have been a delay either way. Judges at this level do not like rewriting laws. That's just how it is. And the primary reason of that hearing was just as Ann Taylor said, this was for the record. Even Judge Hippler said, this is for the record. She has to build a record if she wants to have a leg to stand on for appeal, and we've already talked about that already. And I also believe Judge would have struck down this extension for discovery. It was filed at the last moment, and we can all agree they had plenty of time to file this motion well in advance of the cutoff date. And who was the judge that set these initial deadline dates? Was it Judge Hippler or was it Judge? Because I'm pretty sure it was Judge. Both of these judges wanted deadlines, they wanted the trial to move forward, and they wanted the trial to move forward correctly. Yes, JJ had a personality while Judge Hippler doesn't. And yes, Judge Hippler seems to be more decisive than JJ was. But that doesn't take away from the fact that these arguments very recently were pretty weak. They were primarily to build a record. And as far as these motions to suppress go, we're just going to have to wait and see how that all plays out. If they're basing their argument on what they believe the law should be rather than what it is, these will also be DOA. There's no way around it. Their biggest leg to stand on still is the IGG. We don't know if it's 100% constitutional. We don't know if law enforcement's using it constitutionally. And since it's relatively new and the law doesn't apply to it, they have some wiggle room there. But we'll see once again how that all goes. I'm not making any predictions, but I will say don't hold your breath. And since no one's going to say it, I'll say it right now. To me, doing it right is the priority. Yes, there's a difference between their demeanor and their decisiveness, but if both of these judges would get us to the same end result, which is a fair and transparent trial, then honestly, what is the difference and who cares? But JJ got a lot of grief from both sides. It seemed no matter what that man did, somebody was going to have something negative to say about it. The stage was too big, or this case was too big for his britches. That man was corrupt. He's denying Bryan's rights, or he's denying the rights of the victims. And if you were one of those people who was absolutely unsatisfied with JJ, how are you doing right now, and how are you feeling right now with Judge Hippler? Is this man giving you the warm and fuzzy, or do you feel like the axe is swinging down a whole lot quicker? Up until now, and this is still my own opinion, and you can feel free to disagree because this is an open discussion channel, but I don't really see a difference in the two. To me, a gift is a gift. I could care less about the wrapping. If we can end this whole story with a fair, just, and transparent trial, where at the end we know exactly who did what, and we know what the verdict should be, then that should be good enough for anyone. As of now, I don't have any reason to believe Judge Hippler's doing anything shady. We don't really have any blaring examples like we did with Judge Gold and Judge Bev. And as long as he's not doing anything shady, I don't really care about his demeanor either. The man has standards, and his standards are fine. His standards seem to be well within the rules. So in terms of the world burning all around everybody, y'all can just calm down a little bit. In fact, in a lot of ways, it seems like the state's getting a little shaky in a couple areas themselves, which is a topic for another day. But if you like what I'm doing on this channel and you like what you've seen so far, how about you check one of these other videos out? Y'all be safe now.